Oh, it's right here.
It's usually in the hearing.
This special meeting of the Common Council for October 10th, 2023 is now in session. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Tracy, please call the roll.
Councilmember Anthony. Bascaluti. Here. Frick. Harris. Moranti.
Here.
Morris.
Here.
Roney. Sar.
Here.
Walker. Wallace.
Here.
President Pietro.
Here.
Quorum present.
I'd like a introduction and a second to receive the call of the meeting and place it on file. Ron and Ryan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion carries. Okay, this special meeting is to authorize an additional service agreement for continued development of ADA feasibility study for the Oakdale Beach House and a related transfer of funds. Can I have an introduction second to Juan and Ryan? Any questions?
Yeah, I had some questions,
Okay.
and I was able to talk briefly with Liz before the meeting. So when I was reading the memo from September 13th, and thank you for sending that. I'm looking at these various designs and questions that the city had. We want one family bathroom purposes for it to be outside, so the public can access. And there was so much detail in what needed to be reworked that my first question was, A, were the designs that, I don't have the RFP, did the work that they did actually meet the criteria of the RFP? That was one, the RFP might have been vague. And then two, how come they're submitting something where there was no back and forth discussion, fleshing out what you were looking for, discussing it as they were doing drafts, kicking ideas around, and then coming up with a plan. So then now we find ourselves in a situation where they have put something together that doesn't really meet their needs. And now you need it reworked, and we're in a position now where we have to pay for rework. And it just seems to me that this should have happened as they were doing their work. There should have been discussion, consultation, and what went on there. That I don't know who can answer that.
I can speak to that.
Peter, go ahead.
I was on the committee.
Good.
There was a lot of back and forth. It was, the scope of the RFP was very, very broad. We asked them to do 4 different proposals. I think you saw the original RFP. And there was a lot of leeway within those. And part of the process was refining exactly what we wanted. And they did what we asked for, and then when the cost estimates came in, we felt that they were in most cases too high. And that what we actually needed them to do was to scale that considerably. So a lot of the reworking that they're doing at this point, they responded to the original request. But none of us are engineers or architects. So we wanted a final product that we thought was going to be a better value for the city and address our needs. A lot of those more detail-oriented design things, like a family bathroom with open bathroom, which those kinds of things don't actually affect the final cost per square foot. They're like design details. They might be later, but they were open to receiving it. And as long as I'm going to do what we work, we just felt, well, let's give them all of this feedback. It was feedback that was not necessarily part of the original process because it wasn't, it was like moving walls around inside, so it wasn't going to actually affect the cost per square foot. So we were focusing more on the picture things. And then in this second iteration, there was a chance to add.
So a large
I'm
part
a detail-oriented person.
a large part of the need for a rework came down to okay, now we are seeing what this will cost.
right?
So that was part of the.
And the scale, and we've scaled it,
Yeah,
we've asked them. You know, originally. You know, the brief was, you know, what would we like to see here?
Yeah.
In a perfect world, so we asked for that, and then when we saw what that cost, we were like, oh. So, so we got, you know, we reconvened, we said, well, here are ways we could save money, here are things that would be optional, here's the real priorities. You know, we want to create something that's a real year-round facility for the city.
well, that's very clear.
And all that, but it was really about, you know, it was a learning process. And it was, you know, there were also limitations to what we could do as part of the original process. It wasn't, you know, everybody here didn't see all of the original proposals, but this proposal and only one other were under $50,000. The proposals range up to $140,000, and most of them were, you know, 70, 80, $120,000. So, you know, we focused on the least expensive respondents, but there was a limited amount of meetings that could be built into that process. And so even with this additional money, it's still cheaper than all but one of the proposals that we received.
I don't have any other technical questions. I have another question, but it's not about this.
That's it?
Sorry,
That's all?
that's all on the actual content.
Yeah.
But I have a different question. But I'm sure others may have questions about that.
Well, I just have a comment. I just feel as when you're doing a project like that, there should be a detailed proposal of what they will be covering, cost, everything. It seems to me, not that it's your fault, but it seems to me that was not facilitated by. Not that happy with it, but anyhow, there's nothing we can do right now, right? We have, in order to finish the project correctly, we have to do them.
I
Right?
think to get the better, you know, to get a good result,
Yeah.
and then we should do this next step.
Is there any? Speaking out of part of the committees who sit on
That's not up to me.
What was that question, Naomi? I
Yeah.
couldn't hear.
Did you want to be included in the process for
Yeah.
the
Oh,
context
okay.
redesign? I don't see an issue with including on the committee.
Sure, thank you. And another thing, I think, you know, as of the initial finances, did it come from these department budget and Brenda Hudson anyway? So we're just
Yeah.
contributing to that at this.
Yeah, the proposals for all of us come out of the department budget because we've, for 2 years now, been unable to fill that one role.
Right,
So it's
yeah,
not
that's
like
true.
money that's being taken
No,
from someone else.
Very good financial. Yeah.
Other questions? Oh, sorry.
It was all one.
No, it's just,
If it's ten,
yeah, it's just.
all of your.
Can I go to my second question?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so there's nothing, you know, we've sorted out that this is something that needs to be done. I have, and this is a general observation, it's not about this particular issue. I have issues with, taking funding, looking at money that's in the budget and saying, like in the resolution, it says, well, the youth department is expecting that they will have a surplus of X amount of dollars, and they're going to apply that to this project, etc. I would prefer to see a decision that, yes, we need to do this. And regardless of whether the youth department is going to be in deficit at the end of the year or whether they're in surplus, in general fund, we need to pay for this. And then at the end of the year, you have surplus that goes back into general fund. And then we have a clean line where we can see, okay, our estimates were very good on staffing. We had this estimate for this project. We underestimated for a variety of reasons, had to fund that, and then it stays clean. I would just really prefer to have any discussion of whether or not you're expecting a surplus in staffing to be irrelevant to the decision, because the decision to be based on, is this something we need to do? Yes or no? Yes, it is. Therefore, we fund it, even if you were in deficit. So that's just a general observation. I think, you know, we frequently have meetings here where we're moving money from one line to another line. Doesn't happen much with you, but in other departments, we have things moving around, and it is really very difficult to understand, well, what did you budget for? Why are you over? Why are you under? Why are you taking money from here to put it there? That's really, I think, not a very clean way to do things. So I would actually like the resolution, I don't know if we're voting on the resolution tonight,
Yes,
but I would like the language relating to the surplus. And that's some kind of rationale for why we're going to fund this. I'd really like to see that removed because it's irrelevant.
I think. I agree in some regard with you, Margaret, in terms of, but in this situation, from in the past, especially the youth department, they haven't operated within budget. This has kept that in check, and I think that in this situation, when there's a little bit of surplus, depending on what that goes, and when you go to utilize it to improving a facility like Oakdale, rather than another position or another job and everything, I think that is a smart way of using your surplus. Because either way, if it came back, I mean, basically, it needs to get done. So I guess it goes situation, yeah, and I totally agree, but I guess it goes situation by situation and project by project. I think in this situation, it's a wise use of some surplus, and because it's going back into our the city in a beneficial way.
I don't dispute that. My point is that if I've given a budget and I have a line item for staff,
Sure.
and I have a line item for equipment or whatever else, or for training, at the end of the year, if I have monies over in any of those categories, those are not my monies to spend. That goes back to the city.
Sure.
So it's not like, oh, I've got a surplus over here in staffing. Here's this cool thing that I didn't, that completely unrelated to it.
Right, because
Here's this cool thing that I didn't even think about our budget for, but now that I got $10,000, I'm gonna go out and buy X.
right, and it comes down to the
It's not
personnel.
your
If
money.
you do it,
You're
you
giving this much for staffing, you did or you didn't use it, you can't move it around. It's just a general principle. That's all I'm saying. In this particular case, I can go either way, the thing needs to be done. I just think I would like to have the rationale for doing this not be based on the fact that the department is expecting yourself.
in principle, Margaret, I of course agree with you, as we discussed earlier today. I also, as we discussed, this money is fungible, it's the
Yes.
same money. On the other hand, we're always very clear about where it's coming from. The line item it's coming from, so that makes it clear, where the excess or whatever the surplus is. And finally, although I agree with you, you're asking to, and it's not a bad ask, to change many, many years of how things have been done here. So I think it's worth pursuing. Let's get your
For
resolution.
this situation, let's just move on.
Yes. With that, can I have a roll call vote?
Councilmember Anthony.
Aye.
Vascaluni. Aye. Moranti.
Aye.
Morris. Aye. Star.
Aye.
Wallace.
Aye.
President Pietro.
Aye.
Carried.
Okay, can I have a introduction and second to adjourn?
Motion.
One,
Second.
right, and then Scott. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Okay, we're adjourned, but we'll be back in.
Aye.
Now.
Oh, now. Okay, that is done. We have Wednesday yet? We're not done.
No.
I'm so sad that we couldn't.
Finding such sweet sorrow.
Are you reading?
Where are you running to?
That's our last thing. You resign.
Oh, did I?
On your way out.
No, it's gonna happen now.
Okay. Yes,
It's ready to go. Start.
already here.
That's great.
You're gone?
Yes, sir. Yeah. This is informal now. It's not formal.
No, it's the same link for both meetings, right? On the-
Yeah.
That's the other one.
Yeah, I had to get into the informal meeting one. I was on the other one and no one was on it.
Oh.
This is the one for the special meeting, so.
Oh, yeah, they do.
It's already those two.
Weird.
Because I have two separate calendar, Then you go back and on the other one.
Now it's the same way.
Ready to start, Michael, or do you have any problem with that?
I went back to the first one.
Okay, this is the informal meeting on October 10th. Copies of draft minutes of the September 19th and 22nd meetings have been posted on the city website. Copies of committee reports have also been posted on the city website. So we're going to start with our department reports. Leading off is Liz York. Oh, there's Liz York.
Amazing close again.
Loudly, please, Liz.
I am speaking so loudly right now. Okay. Good evening, everyone. So we'll start as always with youth center programs. So program's been going really well. We've had steady enrollment increases throughout the first month of school and programming. We're anticipating that when all the football is over, flag football, Pop Warner, modified, our numbers will increase a little bit further. A lot of our kids are doing those sports right now. On average, we've been getting about 40 students each afternoon at the youth center, 23 at the church, and anywhere from 12 to 25 teens right now, depending on the nights. But with the weather cooling off, with the season ending early for football, we think that those numbers will also increase a little bit. Since the start of the year, we've been running circus with Bindlestick Family Circus after school, art class with the Art School of Columbia County, and fitness and fun dance club with Operation Unites as our programs. Bindlestick Family Circus after school takes place on Wednesdays in both locations. They start at the youth center and then go to the church. The average participation between both locations is about 40 each time. And they're working with the kids to teach them circus skills like stilt walking, juggling, plate spinning, and more. As the kids continue to do it year after year, they get to further develop and improve in those skills. And Bindlestick does a lot of events where the kids get to go and show off all the skills they've learned as well. So that's really cool. Fitness and fun dance class with Operation Unite takes place at the church with the K-2 children. There's about 20 kids that participate every day. Sometimes the kid just doesn't want to do it, so it's almost full participation. But the dance class allows the kids to have fun exploring dance and movement and singing songs. An art class also takes place at both locations with two different teaching artists, one for each location. Mary Flynn teaches the 3rd through 8th graders, and Allison Rowland teaches the K through 2nd children. And again, almost full participation in that. At the youth center, the kids kind of go in and out, just as the nature of the way it's set up. But you'll have around 10 in there each day. And they're doing some really beautiful art as well. So there's an example of that on this slide, and then on the next slide as well. And so there's some portrait there. One of the 3 people, the girls drew together, their friendship in the middle. The fall scene, and then Yoshi, right? Kirby, that's what it is. One of our kids is obsessed with Kirby, so she drew that picture. I don't know much about Kirby either, much to her dismay. She would die if she heard me calling you. So at the church, it's been really great to see that space come alive with the youngest participants. We only have 6 spaces left for registration because we've got 24 kids signed up, and the max we're going to have in that space right now is 30. What was really cool is a couple of weeks ago now, we were at the Meet the Teacher night at MC Smith. We had a little table. As the parents come through, they would talk to us. One of the parents came up and was so grateful to us that we were at this new site. She said, when her daughter comes home, she sees a difference in her, that she's happier, calmer, and in a better mood on average more than she was last year. So we're beginning to see the benefits already of having that separate site. So thank you very much for that. And there's some photos of them over there doing some of their programs. This past weekend, we kicked off our community open gym hours on Sundays with women's basketball from 11 to 2. We had one person show up, but I'm confident that as we continue doing it, we will have more participation. So if you know anyone, there's a tie. It's just a $5 fee each time you come. It's from 11 to 2, so 3 hours of open gym. We're hoping to get enough people to do pickup, get some games going. If we get enough interest, we'll do a league. I know there has been interest. I'm hoping as we stay consistent and have our doors open, people will start to trust that we're there and show up. This weekend is men's open gym on Sunday, so it's men's basketball this Sunday. I know Tom's already signed up. He's gonna be there at the youth center on 18.
Okay.
So if you guys can play a little while.
I mean.
Sounds not that. Yeah, so we're gonna, we're gonna rotate through women's basketball and men's basketball right now. We're hoping that interest really increases. We think it'd be a really valuable use of the space to open it up to the community. If we get more interest, if we get people requesting other things, we're open to other activities, we're open to longer hours. We really just want people to take advantage of the spaces there. And you can check our website and our calendar for program updates. Right now, it literally just says women's and men's basketball, but if that changes, it will update there as well as all of our social media. All right. Our soccer league is going fairly well. We did get rained out the last 2 weekends in a row. It does look like rain this weekend, but we're planning on being there anyway because we can't miss anymore. We have requested to extend it 1 week so that we can at least get 1 week back, but we're waiting for confirmation on that. We had about 100 kids sign up for the program this year, which is really great. The majority of the kids are in skills and drills, which is for the youngest kids to learn the basic foundations of the sport. That's really exciting because if we've got, I think it's over half of the kids are signed up for that. That means that base is building and we'll have even more kids signed up for the teams next year, which is really cool. We're really excited about it. A special thanks to the community members who stepped up to coach so that league could continue to have teams and games. It was real touch and go for a while. I think people were a little intimidated of coaching soccer. The kids really just needed someone to show up and be there for them. So we couldn't do it without those volunteers. And if you want to volunteer in the future to coach, you can sign up this year for next year's soccer, and we've got basketball coming soon. We'll need a lot of coaches there. And on my last slide. Oakdale updates on the trail. The platform's been repaired. Thus far, there hasn't incurred any more damage. It is a place that is used frequently by those walking the trails for sitting and talking, meditating, working out. The camera we had up to monitor any type of vandalism just really caught people using it and hanging out, and it was really cool to see that it is used. The camera that's right on there is now off because it felt really weird to me to watch people hang out while I was checking for vandalism. So please just don't vandalize things. No, but there were a lot of strange looks at the camera. So that's gone, but it's up on the trail so that we can catch some wildlife hopefully, and then those will be shared. Yeah, so just respect the space. I know that it's not everyone's cup of tea, but there are enough people that are really using it. And on the camera, there's a lot of wildlife that uses it after hours. So if not for us, for them. I think that's so awesome. Thank you.
Hold on a second. Anything you like to add? Where'd she go?
No, I'm here.
Anything you like to add? Okay,
Thank you.
questions from council, Dominic?
This, because last week, in my year, COVID got really high. What's your COVID protocol?
Right now we're just playing it by ear, seeing what's happening. We haven't had any kids yet that have been reported with COVID. We've had a couple of staff who have stayed out for COVID, but we're just monitoring it. We have masks available. We have told staff and kids that if they want it, and anybody that enters, if they want to wear one, they can wear one. And we are encouraging staff when they don't feel well to wear one. So just monitoring at this point.
Great, thank you.
I noticed the platform was done very well.
A gentleman named Corey Young, he's the guy who builds the changing rooms at the beach house.
He did the bridge.
He did the
He did the bridge as well,
Because
yeah.
bridge.
Yeah, and he did that, I bought the wood and he came in and fixed it because we wanted to see it. Thank you, I'll let them know.
You know, another thing that maybe, a little sign is that saying that, you could be under surveillance even if it's not on, but,
Yeah,
you know, because then people are aware.
No, it's the law, you, the sign.
yeah, we have a sign at the entrance to the trails that says that there's cameras up and that nobody's image will be used for any public. It sounds nice on the paper, it sounded nice when I wrote it, but I can't reiterate here.
Yeah.
Other questions? Thank you, guys.
Great job as you
Good to see that.
Mia's not here, so we'll skip seniors, fire department.
Well, couldn't make it, so you got me.
Okay.
Report for month of September. We had 44 calls for service. In the month, 3 fires, correction, 4. 2 accidents, 8 hazardous conditions, which are carbon monoxide, power lines down, different things like that. 5 water problems and or assignments to go to other departments. 2 good intent calls, 17 false alarms, 5 weather related calls, and 1 is listed under other, for a total of 44. So that's the September report. That's based on 2 things in regards to the dive team. One being the boat again. We had our meeting with the DEA for our budget last week, Tom,
Yes,
I think. At the end of the budget meeting, we discussed the boat, and we think we came up with a solution to be able to purchase that. Hopefully get it approved at next month's or next week's meeting before the price of the boat goes up again. So right now, the quote we have is for $217,315. We have $138,570 from the sale of the ladder truck that was put into a fire department equipment account that we can utilize for that boat. And $25,000 from donation money to the dive team from the Polar Plunge. That would leave a balance of $53,745 that we would ask the general fund to pick up.
Sorry, you see that number again?
The bottom, 53,745. That number, so the way, when we order the boat, the payment structure is 20% upon order, 30% upon the start of building it, 30% when the motors are delivered, which is a month or 2 before the final, and then 20% upon completion. It's right now 12 to 14 months is the build time. They said for fire departments, they're doing about a year, so it'll be this time next year. So it'd be 43,463 upon ordering and completion, and the $65,194.50 for the 2 in between. So with the exception of $10,000 out of the general fund, the department has the rest of the money to pay pretty much the first 3 payments of that. I spoke with them today. They're expecting a 4% increase on the 1st of November. So it'd be another almost $9,000 for the price of the boat if we wait another month. On top of the 10, it already went up because we've waited this long. So we'd be almost $20,000 because we've waited this long. So I
What's the total amount, Nick? I'm sorry, what's the total amount?
$217,315.
And that's a flat rate, that's it. It doesn't go above that.
That once we sign the paperwork, that's it. We're locked into that price. So even if it goes up in 3 weeks, as long as we sign before that increase, because this quote is good till October 28th. So as long as we sign before that, we are locked into that price, even though we're not going to take delivery until next year. The only thing that is not included in that price and it's very tough to give us an estimate, is if we were to have it delivered. So the boat's actually built in Canada. So a few of us had thought we'd be willing to go get it, but we would have to try to figure out all of the border issues before that. It might just be easier to pay somebody. They gave me a rough quote today of about anywhere between $5,000 and $6,000 to have it delivered to this firehouse from Canada. But he's like, they can't, he's like, diesel could triple in price by next year, I don't know.
That's not bad in the long run.
So
Insurance.
that's just something next year, when we get closer, that'd be the only extra fee that we would have to look at if we couldn't get everything together to go up and actually get it and bring it back and be comfortable coming across the border with it.
But at this time, you're at 80 or 90,000 secured funding without bonds.
No, we are shy $53,745.
No, I'm still saying we won't have to bond it though.
Correct. Correct, and all the equipment money is there because that's from the sale of the old ladder, and then the dive team has their donations.
Yeah.
In that, so hopefully this week I can work with Heather and the mayor and Tom and Michael and hopefully get a resolution together for next week if that is acceptable.
When would the final payments be due?
The last $43,000 payment would be due upon completion of the boat. I don't know if that's when they deliver it or we pick it up, but that's the last payment is upon completion.
I'm just wondering if there's any way that bond donation from 2025, second 2024 could be applied.
Well, so I think what would have to happen is I think they would have to, the council would have to approve it. Probably from the general fund to begin with, and then if more money from the plunge for next year could go for it, then I guess it could always be amended, I'm guessing. So also with that being said, when we talked about this also with the BEA, our dive team right now is utilizing a 1989 rescue vehicle that we purchased a few years ago used. We're going to be replacing that with a trailer, using the rest of the donation funds that the dive team currently has. So that's gonna save us on yearly maintenance. Right now, we're paying heavy truck maintenance every year for a vehicle from 1989. There's always just more than preventative maintenance that goes wrong with this vehicle. So that's coming out of dive team donations. That's not anything else out of the city, but I just wanted to let everybody know what we're doing, and then we're gonna sell that old truck. So we'll obviously need a resolution once everything is done to offload that truck.
But if we don't know the shipping, we can actually, maybe that pull a bunch of idea could be for the shipping, because we don't know. That won't be included in the resolution.
Well, right, so in that's got, next year, obviously, February, March, we'll have the polar plunge again, so the dive team would hopefully be getting the split again. So next year, we could always also come across and use that money for the shipping as well. You know, like, that's a whole year. So I guess we could, you know, kind of figure that out as we get a little bit closer. If we can't figure out, you know, and confirm that we can get across the border very easily with this thing ourselves. It's only an 8-hour drive. So 8 hours isn't that bad to me. I drive everywhere, so.
Any other questions from the council?
Yeah,
Vicky?
what is the warranty? How long is the warranty for the boat?
So everything's different. While the motors are different from the boat itself. And I'm trying to see. I have it somewhere because I know we talked to them about it.
It's just a rough estimate.
So the manufacturer's warranty, the hull, so the main part of the boat is warranted for 10 years to cover hull construction defects or any materials. So then the motors are covered by that manufacturer, which is Yamaha. And those are usually a year or two. That's typical motor, 3 year, typical motor, warranty.
Yeah, your department has done a good job with finances, explaining everything in this code, everything happening.
You should.
Got it? No more questions? Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Next up, Heather, are you with us? Heather?
Yes, I'm here.
There you
I was in the waiting room under the other meeting ID for the last 20 minutes until Michael sent me a text. So, but I am now here. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
I want you to then, Michael, could you do the same as Rob?
I texted both of them.
You're the best.
Bear with me 1 second here. It's not what I want to do. Okay. Okay. It's going to be a relatively short one. I was without my computer most of the day. I've had this computer for about 2 years. I've already had to have the touchpad replaced, and they just had to replace the motherboard on it today. And now other things don't work on it, but we're having fun. So let me zoom this in a little bit more for you.
That's good.
Better? Yeah. Okay. Okay, so pretty much just the usual suspects. This is through September, so we're now 3/4 of the way through the year. You can see in total, we're at about 85% of budget, which is, certainly good since we're only at 75% year to date. As it has been throughout the whole year, that is largely driven from the Front Street municipal lot, which has rebounded nicely. So the 2023 budget ended up being pretty conservative. We got a lot of money in at the end of 2022 that bumped up the actuals. We didn't have that information at the time when we were doing the budget for 2023. So that's looking like a very strong number there. And everything is pretty much still continuing to play out the way that it has throughout the year. So overall, we're at 75% of year ago, which is about where you'd want to be, because that's year ago full year, not month to month, and 85% versus budget. In terms of building permits and fees, again, looking strong, particularly on the building permit front. And I know there's a bunch of other projects coming up, so we'll take that into consideration, I assume, in our 2024 budget. Sales and mortgage tax, the only thing that's been updated here since last month is the lodging tax. So the lodging tax, we took in about 83,000 in September. That 307.8 thousand, 307,793 is about $70,000 less than it was through September of last year. So that's about a 20% reduction in lodging tax through this period of time. The BEA met with, and Michael met with Michelle Tulo and our short-term compliance officer today. So there is, a hope that some of that can be made up once we get people back into compliance. But it is certainly a little less than it was a year ago. So that's something we want to keep an eye on. We won't get sales tax until probably November for the third quarter, and same thing for mortgage tax. So we probably won't have good eyes on that until probably the November finance meeting. But obviously if it comes in any earlier than that, I will keep you posted. Operationally, we did rebid the audit. We did get 2 bids, the original bid and a bid from our existing auditors. The BEA met and reviewed those options, and we've agreed to go with our existing auditor. And I'm pleased to say that it's a considerable savings versus the one and only bid that we got in our first go round. So we're going to be pursuing that. That's obviously going to keep us very busy for the next 3 months because usually the audits kick off in, like April. So we're going to try and meet our December 31st deadline so we don't have to report anything to the muni market about being delayed on getting our audit completed. And then we also have to do that single federal audit because we spent more than $750,000 in federal grant funds in the year 2022. So that's going to be a first for me anyway. I believe one had to be done during the sewer plant build, but that was a little before my time. As you know, we have agreed that we're going to move our payroll to ADP from Paychex. And so we have our first kickoff meeting with them at the middle of this week, end of this week on Thursday, to start reviewing all the data and the data requirements. The goal is to have that go live January 1st. I have a meeting this Friday with Suzette Bowie of Real Property, Columbia County, to discuss the upcoming Sidewalk Improvement District implementation. There are a lot of questions surrounding how we get the fees actually onto the tax bill. So Suzette and I are going to meet on that. I've also reached out to the finance director of Ithaca to ask how it happens on their front, and if they would be willing to sort of walk me through how their data, because it, as you know, the law that you passed is very similar to the one that was passed in Ithaca. So, slightly different in that my understanding is their planning commission is the one that comes up with the fees, but the fees are basically very similar in terms of they're based on square footage and a number of other things. So, potentially each property has its own unique amount that has to be added. So I'm going to be very curious to find out how they actually get those individual numbers onto the tax bills. We're also going to have to, because this applies to all properties regardless of exemption status. That means that we are now going to have to issue tax bills for all of the properties that currently do not get tax bills because they're exempt. So that's approximately another 30% increase in the number of tax bills to go out. So that's probably about another 800 or so out of, we currently issue a little over 2,000 tax bills a year. So obviously, that's going to be a change in process as well. Looking forward to both of those conversations. And then, as you know, we already talked about payroll. We're also looking at starting our conversion to the new general ledger software. I think we're going to start with the general ledger itself, which is, the accounting backbone system. And then we're going to move to the utility billing, which is the water and sewer building, water and sewer billing that, comes out of the water and sewer departments. And then eventually tax collection. We would obviously prefer it to be in the exact other way around, but the unique challenges that we require on the tax standpoint, particularly being able to bill quarterly and also being able to accommodate payment plans for people who are delinquent in their taxes is the things that are going to be holding that up. In terms of resolutions, there may be more than these. Like I said, I didn't have my computer for very long operationally, so I had to get this out kind of quick. But a couple of things we're going to do. Ryan Wallace and I met and we reviewed the outstanding, what I would call the committed yet not paid outstanding tourism board grants. He was able to provide great insight onto all of the ones from the point of time that he joined the tourism board. Before that, obviously, he didn't have much insight. But our general consensus was if we're going back to 2020 or 2021 with people who have not, requested payment for the balance that the original resolution was for, then that's probably not going to happen. And it is probably because they didn't qualify for it. There were certainly a number of things where, they were supposed to do 2 events and they only did 1, et cetera, and so forth. There were a couple, I believe, particularly with Bindlestiff Circus, where they applied and were approved for grant amounts, but I believe they had to have received other grant funds from other sources in order to make the whole thing happen, and those didn't happen. So basically what I'm going to do is put a resolution together that basically says, we're acknowledging that these funds that were considered to be committed can now be released because all the commitments have been paid, and also recommend that those funds can be used as a source of the 2024 promotional events in the budget, because they still are considered part of the reserve fund. So anything that is, freed up has to go back into that reserve and still has to be used for those requirements. But since we do budget for promotional events in the budget pretty much every year, at least outside of the years that we have the tourism board, that seems like a very good fit and will help, A, use up those monies in the way they're intended, and B, provide a little relief, at least in 2024 and possibly part of 2025 on the budget front. Also going to see another resolution for a capital reserve for fire equipment. I didn't catch most of Nick's presentation because I was in the waiting room on the other meeting. But when we sold that truck, and I believe he was talking about those funds, I think it's 138.5. That was the net profit on selling that truck, and the original sales agreement did say that it had to be put towards some sort of fire equipment. Although we have already established a capital reserve, I believe, and I will confirm this, but I believe it was specifically for a fire truck. And if that's the case, we just need to basically do another one that's broader that will allow the boat, should we choose to use those funds that way, to qualify. A couple of budget amendments that I'm aware of right now. One is for the police and fire retirement services. We got our estimate for this year, and we got the projection for the following year, and it is going up tremendously. We used to say that approximately so we have 2 retirement systems, police and fire is one, and then it's called ERS, which is just employee retirement system, and that's everybody else. It used to be that those 2 combined, we would budget approximately $750,000 a year for. In the 2025 projection, the police and fire one alone is $750,000. So, it's been going up pretty regularly. When the market was doing well, the increases weren't that bad, but obviously with the slowdown in the market and interest rates, they're looking at, 20% plus increases in the contribution we have to make. So the first step is making sure we have enough money to pay for the one that's going to be due this year. So you'll be seeing that. And then the only other one that I'm aware of right now is there's going to be a transfer, which I think I can find, within the budget, so it won't be a budget amendment, for payroll shortages. The way that the payroll agreement works is it's based partially on the number of payroll checks that get issued, and we've had more people on payroll in this past year than we had in prior years, and so that's caused that number to go up. And that's pretty much what I've got.
Thank you, Heather. Council members, questions? Dominic.
Heather, I just got one question. I know you said it's gonna be short. You give Rob a run for his money.
I'm sorry. I thought that was short.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Thank you, Heather. Any other questions? Okay, let's move along then. Chief Franklin. Are you there?
I am here. Hello.
Okay. You're on.
All right. I apologize. I'm not there in person. I will be at the next one, hopefully, baby willing on this one. So the number of use of force incidents for the month of September was 1, on which a taser was deployed. It was during a domestic incident and a subject was tased. The number of arrests and bookings for the month, 38 arrests with 47 total charges. Number of emotionally disturbed person calls was 7, and number of calls involving a drug overdose or suspected drug overdose was 0. That's all for the reporting. You have the quarterly reports. Does anyone need me to go over the quarterly report at all?
No, no one seems to.
Okay. And then in response to Vicky's request from the last meeting, I know I sent the email that there were 3 accidents involving pedestrians for this year, 2 of which were last month. And I know specifically Vicky was wondering about the incident in July. And just to give a little bit of information about it without going too deep, there's very unusual circumstances. The first report was that a subject was walking in the roadway and then got hit by a car. But after investigation, it seemed that a subject was actually laying in the roadway at dawn around 5 a.m. Not really sure why, near Frederick Street, well, on Frederick Street, and a car turned from Green Street onto Frederick Street, didn't see the person laying in the road and ended up hitting them. So no damage to the car, and the subject is okay, but not in a crosswalk. No crosswalks were mentioned for that. And then last month on the 2nd, it was a postal worker was bumped by a car who didn't observe the postal worker walking across the street. Again, no injuries, no damage to the car. I think the employee reported it because it's required. I don't think they actually wanted to report it. However, they were still bumped by a car. And then on the 18th, South 3rd and Warren Street, a subject was struck crossing in the roadway. No mention of a crosswalk there either from that, because an operator said that they were blinded by the glare of the sun. But again, no major injuries on that, just said she had some pain to her leg or her thigh. And that's it for the year for pedestrians.
Any questions from the council? Anyone? Nothing? Okay. Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome. And that's all I have for tonight. Oh, well, actually, one other thing that I did want to bring up is that I know the incident with the local artist was kind of going on the community board. I don't know if everyone is familiar with that, with a subject damaging a local artist property and making some racial slurs and some threats to that person who was videoing them. And if you want me to dive into it a little bit more, I can, but just know, I just want everyone to know that we are investigating it to move forward with charges with that person.
Anybody?
I don't know what happened, but yeah. I'm not.
Yeah,
The rest of the mess.
I'll let Michael. He knows everything. Okay, thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Mr. Perry, you with us? I guess that's
I
a
am.
yes.
Okay. All right, everybody hears me just fine? Yes. Am I muted?
Yes.
Yeah, we can
hear you.
Oh, okay, good. All right, so accepted for August, actually it's supposed to be, was $39,000. This is just, it's funny because Heather was talking about the last time we had a federal audit was when we built the sewer plant. And that was about 13 years ago. And what you're seeing here is actually original equipment. It looked much nicer, obviously 13 years ago. This is a grit classifier. Essentially, is it takes the grit out of the collection system when it hits the plant, and then throws it into a conveyor belt, and it goes into a dumpster to be hauled away. This is the replacement. You know, I mean, it's, you know, even something like this is $10,000. I mean, like I say, the plant's 13 years old, which means everything in there is 13 years old and everything is aging. Also, at the same time, we built the South Front Street pump station. So you can see the Amtrak lot behind it. This is one of the main 3 pumps that are in there. Something significant had to come through because it bent the shaft that goes to the volute, and this is the impeller that's in here, and that's got a big chunk of it missing. So we're not sure what made its way in there, but whatever it was pretty sizable. You know, we had it, you know, we sent it off, and you know, it's been repaired since. At the water plant, just over time, this water plant is actually 18 years old now. So some of the fittings start to wear, and in this issue there was a crack. The sodium hydroxide, which is the caustic soda that does some alkalinity for the treatment process. Once it becomes exposed to air, you know, it dries out and crystallizes. So in the interim, while it was being fixed, we just ordered a tote, which is basically a small portable tank, and we ran it, chemical feed pumps off of this while we were able to cut, separate, and replace all that. More repairs to the plant, more gasket seals. This is actually out at the reservoir. There's the receiving pit at the base of the reservoir. One of the things that we're noticing is that the sodium permanganate that is injected out there, it's an oxidant. We've been using twice as much as we typically did. And when I say typically, I mean for like the first 15, 17 years. So this is truly an anomaly. We're trying to identify what the need of it is. It could have been demand related. So, you know, we do regular tests of the organics in there, and the organics are up a little bit, but not enough to warrant that. So now as we tend to rule things out, we installed this remote meter because we're trying to see what's actually going through the chemical feed building at Churchtown, and then we'll match that up with what's coming through the plant. We're concerned that we may have a leak on the transmission main, but we've walked it before. We haven't noticed anything. So now we're just trying to quantify the values to see if there's any kind of disparity. Also, one of the things we did this month was pipe cleaning of the transmission main. So this is actually out in the forge, and there's a poly pig that goes in there, and it's low tech, but we cut a tree stump, stick it in there to help force the poly pig past the valve that's in there. This is at one of the pits at the Wiltzig racetrack property, and we use it. This is a high point in the transmission main, and so we installed a new saddle to use it as an air relief valve. Here you see, this is the forge. This is the pump, and what it does, sucks the water out of the Taconic Creek and then pumps it through, which pressurizes the pig to force it down the line. And this is the air relief valve that was installed after that saddle was installed. And then this is one of the other receiving pits at the Wiltzig. So we take this section out so that way we can load one poly pig in and then extract the other one once it comes through, because it changes from 16 inches to 12. And so this is where we make that transition. So this is just, you know, once the pipe is, at this point, we're waiting for the pig to get here from the forge. And then at the end, it pops out in the reservoir. It floats. The old ones didn't float. They set, you know, we had to go out with a boat and a little grappling hook and try and fish it out. But this is a little bit easier. And what else do we have here? You know, some more road repair because we're still in blacktop season. We want to get as much done as we can before the plant shuts down next month. So this was further up in Harry Howard, and what happens is, you know, when we repave the road, obviously this was an overlay, so the road got crowned a little higher. And what's happening is there was some runoff going over the sidewalks and into their driveways. So our guys cut a portion of it out, installed a little drainage ditch, And you can see by, the remnants of the last rainfall that everything rides pretty well in the middle as it, meanders down. And then once it gets down, it runs into the storm lines, in the storm system. The Fairview intersection was a bit of a, well, you can use a lot of expressions, I guess. I'm not, but it just wasn't, people weren't used to it. They were kind of still driving on you can see this one on the other side of the yellow line when we first started, because they were used to there being 2 turn lanes there. Then we installed all the barricades and the cones. And so now we have, we striped the line down to the Rosary. And this seems to have solved the problem. People kick over into that first lane, and we haven't seen any issues, since. So, and since we put the barricades up, just some kind of maintenance stuff. This is part of the armature for the vacuum side of the street sweeper, and it got hooked on something, and it's which bent, and it was pulled out of alignment, had to be replaced. So this is the new piece. A lot of, what else we got here? The saw cuts did for the arbors, for the CAC's Arbor Day project. So we hammered through. This one actually had about 8 inches of concrete, which is twice what you normally see in a sidewalk. But we had the equipment, so they got through it. All right. We remember the storm damage from last month. So some of the trees did have to get contracted out. So this happens to be a contractor in the cemetery using a crane because it was inaccessible by our equipment. They also had to grab some trees on, I believe there's something near the Oakdale, Glenwood, Upper Glenwood. There was a tree they had to take, and there was another one somewhere else. They just were too big for us to grab, and kind of in a precarious position. Milling and paving project. We opened those bids a couple months ago, and we expect that usually takes place in November. Also, when the City Hall project was done, there was some asbestos that was within the scope and some that wasn't. So we have to put out a little, get some quotes for that to address the rest of the project. I got some documents from Michael today, and we'll just put something together, and we'll see where the numbers come in, and then we'll present it to you and trying, because at this point there's not a whole lot left to keep it. This is the only thing outstanding that keeps us from moving back to City Hall. Not that I'm complaining, because I don't complain about that. This is at the cemetery. So they spent a considerable time. First of all, they're opening up the roads so that people could get back into it. But this gives you an idea of the size of the trees that were knocked down, and this is a root ball. That loader can lift about 12,000 pounds, so that's a pretty big stump. You can see it's hard to tell, but the tires are actually kind of down a little bit, so it's pretty heavy. The rest of it, we sent the chipper crew around, and this is cemetery guys and DPW guys. So it's mostly mostly cleaned up. There's some remnants left, but we'll get to those. Outside of that, the Ferry Street Bridge, within the next couple of weeks, we'll be having our first pre-construction demolition meeting on site. So that project, is going to move forward. So it is what it is. That's what I have. Stop share.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Questions from the council first. Margaret.
Yeah, Rob, I have 2 unrelated questions. First one relates to the DEC issue with the sluiceway on Union Street that runs under several houses where we have flooding in the basements. Can you give us an update on where we are with that? I know that the plan was submitted within the 30 days to DEC, but I'm not sure where we are on actually resolving it. I believe it has to be corrected by the end of this year. So where are we on that?
So we did camera tests downstream because we did witness that the flow was actually backing up from 4th Street. And, the whole, I don't want to say we're hopeful, but we were kind of hoping that we could find some failure or obstruction downstream that was causing it, and then open up the street, fix it, and be done with it. But when we sent the camera through, everything looked just fine. So we don't see anything. It just appears to be a capacity issue. At this point, we have a couple of options. One would be installing a check valve somewhere off of the alley that would prevent the flow from backing up. That's not without its own challenges. I don't know that it's the best option, but it's something that we have to consider. The other part of it is that what we'll do next is we have to come down and shoot inverts and elevations. Basically, you take the GPS of the rim elevation of the city streets, you go and you subtract the top and the bottom of the pipes, and then you have to figure out what can, because the sewerage system requires gravity. So if you want to shift the flows somewhere else, we have to make sure that we can hit those elevations. Obviously, if the only time you can go upstream is when you have a pump station or something like that. So we have to see what's feasible. And that's where we are next, is we have to basically do a detailed mapping of the system around it.
So it's, Rob, it sounds as if, it's mid-October now. It sounds as if like right now, we're still not at a point where we know exactly what the problem is and how it's going to be fixed by the end of the year.
Well, that's the discussion we're having with DEC. We have a meeting with them in the next couple of weeks. So
can you keep us updated on that? I know I've had questions from a number of constituents about this because they're very concerned.
yeah, well, I mean, if it was in, like I said, it was in the middle of the street, we would have exposed it, corrected it, and been done. But it's underneath somebody's house,
Well, there are multiple houses.
making it more difficult.
It's very challenging. I had another unrelated question, but other related question.
Council, any other council members?
Rob, I have a question. I'm not sure if has to do with your department, but right on 7th Street, where the Depot Brewery is, and now it's going to be the project, I noticed a row of trees all cut. There might be 10 or 15 trees that were cut. And I think they're going to be putting the fence all the way to the road.
Because they're going to be widening the road.
So we had to cut those trees?
We didn't cut them, the contractor's doing it. They're going to make 7th Street wider to accommodate more parking.
Okay, okay,
What's gonna happen to the sidewalk?
yeah.
He's got to put a new sidewalk in. What do you think? Everything's got to move out. So they're coming but they're coming on their property. So
How much
more
water?
more space for people.
Madam Chair.
Okay, right.
got it.
Thanks.
Margaret, you have another question?
I think there may have been a follow-up question on the sluice way, if you want to finish that topic first.
Okay. Jack,
So
identify yourself for.
I'm Jack. So on the stone sewer, then you talked about calculating, ways to divert it. What part would you think about diverting then so that it doesn't travel under the houses anymore?
We don't know. We've got to take the elevations. If there's a couple inches here and a couple inches there, that's something we may be able to cheat if it's a couple feet. And, and it also has to be so many, the pitch has to be able to be modified because we need to maintain there's very little flow during dry weather. Or, like when we send the camera in there, you see hardly any flow in there. And we have to we try to keep things moving. Otherwise they settle out. If things settle out, you have prolonged drought. Then the next thing you know, they start going septic. And when it comes septic, it creates, gases like methane, which, we don't like, and other things. So, we can't create 4 other problems by solving one. That's why we have to figure out, get an idea of kind of an elevation, a hydraulic plan, if you will, of everything that's in there and figure it out, because that's something that's the information we don't have right now.
Sure. So you had mentioned about it being in the middle of the road, it would be an easier problem. So it does take place in the street initially. If you go to, I think it's 445 Union Street, the manhole is in front of that house on the sidewalk. So you could go from there straight down Union Street, and you wouldn't have to travel under any houses at that point, correct?
You hope, maybe.
No houses in the middle of Union Street, so I feel confident about it.
Well, then, okay.
maybe you know, but, so just to be clear, then you don't, or you do expect to meet the deadline set by the DEC at the end of the year?
If it's something that can be done intermediary and it's low hanging fruit, then yes. If it's construction of a new sewer main, then no. Because you'll be probably in the $1 million range.
Right, yeah, well, okay, yeah, I mean, I know that there were certain fines that were basically threatened, you know, to go into effect if it wasn't met, so, you know, I think, you know, it's an opportunity hopefully to replace a 140-year-old piece of infrastructure that's flooding, you know, who knows how many houses and businesses, so, you know, I hope that, you know, we shouldn't have to be forced to do it, but that, you know, we should want to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. Thank you. Margaret, you had another
Yes.
question.
I would like to go back to picture number 8 of Rob.
Picture number 8.
That's my favorite one.
Yeah, I really liked it. So Rob, I want, you know, we've had this you have reported to us multiple times on the fact that the rising cost of water treatment and that the chemical costs are going up and so forth. And so something I would really like to see, and I'm sure a lot of people on the council would like to see, is maybe going back over the last couple of years and showing us, you know, which chemicals are required for the water treatment, what the unit cost was over time, and then you indicated on when you were talking about number 8 that you were seeing much higher use of chemicals here, and you were trying to investigate what was going on. So I think something to understand would be when we're talking about increasing cost of water treatment, how much of it is being driven by straight increase in unit material cost, and how much of it is being driven by increased units.
You see that screen?
Yep, I do.
Okay, so this is an analysis I presented based on bids in 2021 and 2022. You can see that you know, they all went up. Some went up 6 and 10%. Some went up 40%. And sodium hypochlorite, which is chlorine, is the single most chemical, the single largest consumed chemical for water and sewer. It's the only chemical consumed by water and sewer. It's for disinfection. It's state and federally mandated as part of our treatment processes. And that went up 75% in 1 year. And there was another, which I can't find that one yet. There was another analysis that was presented where these went up like 200% over 3 years.
So I guess what I'm asking though, Rob, is in addition to the unit cost increases, could we also have a table that showed, you know, the cost for this period was X dollars based on 100 units at this price. The cost for the next period was twice X, but yes.
I understand the question.
Yeah, we went up, but we used 150 units.
All right, that's no problem.
That's kind of what you were getting at in your slide 8. So I think that would be really interesting information for us to have. That was my only other question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Yep.
Council members? Okay,
Another question, public.
one question.
Rob, can you give us an update on the water main break under 4th Street that hasn't been permanently repaired for 3 months, and why it's such a mess on the street?
Well, that's why we have it coned off so that people don't go traipsing into it. But once we're trying to coordinate with Chatham or Catskill, I mean, because they have a piece of equipment that should help us make quick work of it. And they're busy, we're busy. It's just a matter of coordination.
The last time you talked to the superintendent over there?
Maybe a couple weeks ago, a month ago.
And you didn't make plans to do anything then?
Okay.
No, I didn't get them a Christmas list either.
How much does it,
Bill?
how much does a guillotine saw cost, Rob?
Bill,
Any idea?
Bill?
Is there a reason that the Hudson DPW doesn't own a guillotine saw and Catskill does?
Well, we all make choices, Bill.
Or make choices, so that was your choice not to buy one of these saws?
Bill.
Well, it's more than just a saw. You have to have a hydraulic unit that operates it.
Christmas,
If you give it to him.
honestly.
Moving along, we have a couple presentations tonight. Who's gonna be shorter?
So between us and who else?
Right next to your bill.
Oh.
Or how about you gonna shoot for it?
Bill, go first.
Oh, Bill, I think you can go.
Yeah.
I sent your, initial presentation around to the entire
Okay.
This is
council.
the
Right?
request for support presentation. right?
Yes.
Right, well, I'm requesting a support resolution for, our cannabis company Blaze, New York LLC. We filed 2 provisional applications already. We're looking to file our 3rd application with property, which would expedite, the licensing process for us and hopefully give us a license. And we're looking at Hudson as our primary location. I sent the president a copy of our community plan. You guys know I was born and raised here, and I actually wrote the community plan with the intent of truly being a partner in the community. And part of my community plan, just so I'm the community service, so service they come, whatever title we gave me. So it's my partner and I, he's Latino, so we will be a minority-owned company. And in that, just so that, I wrote in there that 2% of, up to 2% of our revenue would go back to the city for the areas that were really harmed by the war on drugs. And I know that we have those records because I worked with the police department on a grant before with DCJS, so I know they had those statistics of what areas was really targeted. And in dispersing those funds, I would allow the council to appoint 1 person. I would allow the mayor's office to appoint 1 person, and myself would appoint the 3 others from the community at large. That's pretty much it, since you guys have the.
And your books would be open to those people, correct? So that they could see a true accounting of that 2%.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. So just to let you know, this is similar to what a few other potential dispensaries are offering, but the big difference here, of course, is that we all know Mr. Hughes. And he actually is, unlike the others, is offering us a place on their community board that will help determine how that extra remember that 2% is above 4% that comes directly to the municipality, to us, from whatever sales happen. Questions for Mark? Oh, sorry, Mark first.
Yeah, the only question I have is this. The process is that you apply for a license, right?
Mhm.
And that has nothing to do with us. And as I was reading it, I was thinking, okay, here's a business, they're gonna apply for a license, they will or will not get one, and then they would go before presumably the planning board and say, no, that's where I went wrong.
Yeah.
So what I'm confused on is, what support is it you're asking for from the council? Support so that you get your license, or what? I'm missing on that.
Right, so when I met with the council president, 1 is because I always wanted to bring my business. I was some other municipalities that kind of wooing us, but I wanted to start here. But the main gist of it is, if you put in an application, I mean, depending on who you are and where you are in the process, you have a good shot at getting a license. Well, I want to be a true partner of the community. So in order to be a true partner of the community, I want to make sure I involve all you guys, because I don't want to set up a business in the community, extract money from that community, and then move on. That's not the goal of my company. Our company is to partner with you, to partner with other agencies in the city, so that we benefit not only ourselves, but we benefit the communities that were harmed by the war on drugs, which is where I was raised.
All of that I understood. The part that I didn't understand was, what does our support have anything to do with whether or not you're?
It enhances the
Yeah,
application.
it enhances the application, because our only requirement is that we notify the clerk, which I will be doing fairly soon.
So,
What's the piece I just couldn't-
yeah, other applications have not asked for our support.
I mean,
They don't have to.
right, the state could issue like 20 licenses, and then it's up to the.
Well, there's so many rules, it won't happen that way.
Yeah, I know,
Uh,
just saying, I just was, yeah, I'm just a little confused.
Now, Bill has asked for, just as a matter
Okay.
of enhancing his application. I know Malachi had a question.
Yeah, so Bill, how you doing, man? I guess I wanted to say, just on a personal note with the cannabis, I feel that, if it was directed, maybe primarily towards, medical purposes, I would be on board, but, knowing that I think recreationally around here, it's trickled down to the kids in the community, and I just saw some effects that it do to some of our kids around here, so.
I totally respect that, Alderman. And let me say this, Joe, is when you look at the cannabis industry in itself, prior to Ansinger and the Nixon administration, cannabis was widely used not only for medical purposes, but for a whole host of other purposes, including recreational. Where it got convoluted and all mixed up is where they came in and they declared this war on drugs. But the war on drugs wasn't on any other community than the Black community. And so when you got the Black churches involved, they started seeing how we had Black families broken up because of all the arrests that were done. But really, cannabis itself, when you look around the world, you can look at some of the most advanced nations, the Dutch, Germans, Ireland, Spain, these countries don't criminalize cannabis at all. We did it, and it was a real legend to the Black community. And so what we did in the Black community, this one, what we did on the Black community is we put this mentality on that no more will this be allowed in our community, instead of really attacking the source that we should attack, it was the law enforcement.
Where would it be?
So I have several locations. I don't want to disclose that right now because of one, the competitiveness, and two, because of the application. What we're looking at Columbia Street and Warren Street. And if we get a license from a location where we're at, because of the size of the city, another location wouldn't be able to set up within 2,000 feet of us.
I thought it was changed to 1.
No, it's based on the size of the population. And when you look at Hudson's population, it's so small, they wouldn't allow it to.
Can I mention parking?
Yeah.
Well, Vicky, your concern, there are a lot of rules.
Yeah.
So it has to
It
be.
has to be away from schools and
Oh, yeah.
parks and all that.
Yeah, so,
Everything
churches.
Still in the park.
yeah, so what they require you to do is to do a GPS scale.
Yeah.
And it has to be
Kids.
200 feet from churches, 500 feet from schools, things of that nature. Security is primo, so you have to have cameras inside and out that covers the full scale of the building. You have to have approved lighting, so if we were to do any kind of lighting, I would certainly have to come to the city if it was going to be intrusive, but if not, you have to have that. So really, most of the money of the operation is in the security and also the regulatory end.
Dominic.
Thank you. A couple of things though. In your application, you said for employment, is there any way to put the disabled community for employment too, to also include them?
With the what?
This disabled community, people with
Oh.
disabilities. I saw that excluded from
No,
your.
that's at the top of my list, though.
I know.
I myself
but the list that
legally
was sent-
blind, so I'm not.
The memo that was sent wasn't there.
Oh, I must have, because I went through and I was editing this because we actually applied for and got and received a license in New Jersey. So I wanted to make sure that I did, full intention to make sure, and in fact, I could sit down and work with you so you can help me identify some of the disabled agencies that we can work with, because I plan on working with re-entry. My goal, and that may be a tough goal, but my goal is to make sure I hire 50% of the people from this community. But they also have to be qualified.
Right, yeah.
Right, but I'll be more than happy to sit down with you. Hire people that.
And another thing is that because of the regulations, is that, does it, if the council approves or supports yours, does that, is it monopolizing someone else that's in our community that wants to do the same thing? but now because the council's supporting one business, over there is at a disadvantage to someone else.
No,
Dominic, to answer your question more precisely, sorry, Bill. I've let them both know that Bill has come to us and that they have the option of also asking.
Yeah, no, I'm just asking, that's great.
Right, no, in other words, we're not favoring him.
Right, that's good to know.
what I say to other businesses, because I did the same thing in Jersey, what I say to other businesses, it would have been smart of them, because you're not required.
Right, yeah.
But why would you come into a community and set up a business such as a cannabis business and not go to the, and use in the community? Why I'm standing before you.
Ronnie has a question? You're muted.
It's not so much a question as to just kind of counter Malachi's point. I think Malachi has a good, he's coming from a right place, thinking about the youth. But the one thing that should be considered is that currently, as it stands, cannabis is legal, but if we don't have somewhere that sells it in the community, that only empowers the people that are selling it illegally. And people are still smoking weed. If you walk around Hudson, you can smell it. So they have, the youth has access to it. It's whether we're going to facilitate.
He dropped.
He's gonna say the responsible purchaser.
That was funny.
Well, the youth doesn't have access to that, the dispensary.
No, it wouldn't have access.
So,
Yeah, because
yeah,
in my establishment, actually, we would, and it is required, right, create a vestibule. So you'll have a first door and then you'll have a security guard in between, and then you'll have a second door. And in between there, that you actually have to write a whole plan of how to ID and people come in, what we have,
Now, this is only a dispensary, not
only this one.
not any small area to smoke.
Correct. Oh, Ronnie's back. Go ahead. You want to finish your comment, Ronnie?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. My laptop died. I was just saying that, currently the youth has access to it, and it would just be a way for us to facilitate a legal and controlled business where they, not obviously not youth, but like the people that are legally able to acquire it. And that would ensure that the people that are selling it illegally are, economically hit. They're not as incentivized. They don't have as big of a customer base. So this is in a way combating access for youth, illicit access.
Let you guys know, I've been on the community service board dealing with alcohol and tobacco part for 10 years now. Still on the board, and I definitely will be working with 20 counties and a lot of the agencies, educating our youth about the use of not using cannabis. So,
Okay, so we'll see a resolution next week, if we want to support it. Bill Hughes and Company.
thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Now, our next presentation is by the winning proposal for the Dunn Warehouse.
Hey.
Do you want to let everybody know who you are?
Yes, I'm Gabriel Katz.
I'm Caitlin Bayada.
And I'm Sean Rowland, and if you're wondering about our acronym, CGS is very creative, it's the first letter of all our names. And yeah, we're really excited to present before the council. If some of you were part of the competitive selection process, you probably have seen some version of these slides, but for folks who haven't, excited to take you through. And so this is our vision for the Dunn Warehouse. I think everyone probably knows the building. It's an iconic historic building on the waterfront, the only historic building on the waterfront. And we felt very strongly, and kind of our motivation behind the presentation was that we want to help bring it back to life and partner with the city to do that, to make it a space that is alive and active and welcoming and really open to the entire community of long-term residents and visitors, really just kind of building on the success that already exists at the waterfront as a beautiful space and kind of taking that to the next level. So what we proposed, very briefly, was do a long-term lease with the city where we would act as both the developer and the long-term tenant. And the reason we proposed this rather than a purchase was because we felt as since this building is an important piece of the waterfront, and since it's an important historic building, that really the ownership should stay with the city. You only have one waterfront, and if you sell it off, really hard to get back. And so our motivation was really, but think about an economic model that supports the city and helps, the city's coffers, but also really, create the partnership between our group and the city for both division and sort of sharing in the, how we get. And so very briefly, we're going to go into the program more later, like what we're proposing as uses. So I'm going to skip that part. Let's go to the next, this slide. So kind of thinking broadly about the vision, we started at a place of equal access, thinking that the waterfront is for everyone, like for all residents and all visitors. It's a huge natural resource to the city of Hudson, and we should do all we can collectively to kind of emphasize and enable people to use it and enjoy it. So we thought about kind of flexible and overlapping uses so that you can kind of extend the time of year that the waterfront is pleasant to be on. We thought about creating community spaces and event spaces on the waterfront, because who wouldn't want to be able to do something fun and exciting while looking at the Hudson River and kind of all the beauty that's down there. And then we thought a really important piece would be to have some sort of healthy, affordable, and accessible food and beverage program, so that rather than, sometimes I'll pack my lunch from home or go somewhere and buy a lunch and then I go sit on the waterfront rather than to do that every time. Wouldn't it be cool if there was a local business to support to be able to go and get lunch down there and sit and enjoy everything? So that's kind of how we thought, just from a very high level, about access and what the point is of doing this project together. Next slide. And then as we dug into it more, we thought about, okay, well, what do people do on a waterfront, and how do we sort of build into that and sort of continue to make something that's really dynamic. And kind of what we came to was like healthy and exciting. Exciting and healthy were kind of two words that kept coming up for us, and we were like, okay, how would we do that? And we kind of just started thinking about active recreation. A lot of times, like if you do go visit a city, then there's a river running through the city. There's always trails. There's always kind of parklets. There's sort of different like playgrounds and stuff like that people can enjoy. And they're like, well, what if we could have a mini version of that in Hudson? So these are some of the ideas that, we bounced around, and in the next phase of our project, if the council chooses to approve it, that's like the due diligence period where we dig into what of all of these ideas are feasible and we can realize. So, some of them just briefly is like, what if we could have a running track around the perimeter? I think one of the board members thought about, what if we had what if we could have a skating rink? What if there's a basketball court? Then we started thinking about what would be the businesses that could be housed in here, or the nonprofits that could be housed in here. So we kind of get into lots more details as we go through. I think I want to hand it over to Caitlin, who's put together this amazing presentation of all the renderings, and there's a trained architect, so can probably speak a lot better than I can to the program.
Thank you, Sean. Yeah, and I guess just building upon what Sean said in terms of the intended uses in the due diligence period, we're really excited to work with the community to establish what those uses would be, through focus groups and including different processes. So here, looking at the site, we kind of have the south section, the north section, and then the east section. And we're conceiving of the south section primarily as one larger open event space that can be programmed for existing community events as well as private events. And then a lot of our strategy is how does the building lead out into the existing landscape surrounding our site, and then also to the larger riverfront. So here there would be kind of an outdoor event space that can be subleased and then, or for events and rented. And then here would be the primary entry to the event space, and then the smaller outdoor courtyard here. On the north section of the building would be 3 tenants, 2 commercial tenants and 1 food and beverage tenant that Sean mentioned. I think for those commercial tenants, we're really interested in also thinking about like waterfront education and existing community groups. And then again, having another outdoor space adjacent to that, that could be in, you know, an educational outdoor lounge or an outdoor dining area. And then we have the community pool, which kind of fits in this L shape here, that would be supported by, or kind of protected and supported by this new construction, very small, kind of covered outdoor, like restaurant seating area, not restaurant, sorry, dining area, and also on the other side, like a bathroom bar, kind of that would be able to be used by both the events tenants as well as the pool. And then this east section would be support for the food and beverage as well as loading for all of the uses. And then here you're seeing that in plan, kind of south section, 3 tenants of retail on the north section, and then the food and beverage kitchen and our swimming pool. And then this here would be, this is an existing structure, and then that kind of covered pavilion that's a buffer between the pool and the assembly is what you're seeing here, which is all exterior space. So minimal new construction, trying to really leverage the existing architecture. And so some of our goals really here, which is just support all the existing research that was done for the waterfront in the climate adaptive reuse plan and all of the other amendments to include in the RFP. Comply with city zoning and planning requirements, restore and revitalize this project in a timely manner, which we're having an estimated total of 30 months approximately. Again, working with the community, so it's a community responsive project in the due diligence phase, really including the community as a partner in the planning. And then developing an economically sustainable model, and again, speaking to the mixed use nature of the program, to having a diverse building and uses for the diverse community. And so these are just, this slide's like goes into detail about some of the groups that, you know, we've already been talking to community partners about some of the organizations we might be able to work with. I heard, you know, Bindlestiff Circus is already doing groups and workshops down at the waterfront, Robot Hudson Greater Promise, Kite's Nest, Youth Center. So just some organizations that we could work with, and then, you know, more waterfront organizations such as the Sloop Club and the Oakdale Youth Center. You know, working with these community organizations to imagine what programs we could host. And then these are just some renderings. Here you're seeing the north retail section, the outdoor education area and dining adjacent to the 3 retail tenants. Here's the pool, and like, this is what I was talking about the outdoor, like kind of shower area and bathroom buffer bar. And then again, you're seeing that kind of barrier that's end connector between the event space and the pool. And I think Gabriel's going to speak a little bit to the logistics.
So for me, this was a really exciting RFP to answer because it allowed us to kind of use, as a little bit of nerds, use kind of our knowledge of the historic structures and also kind of reverse engineer. You know, Caitlin asked me to look at this and say, okay, you know, everyone wants to buy this building. We want to lease it. We want to partner with the city. How do we back into terms that allow us to still go out and make this an accessible and community space, thinking about what the rent levels are in Hudson and how do we stay way below that so that we can prioritize the types of tenants we want to work with, and also so we can have that sustainable model. So this actually backed into it. And the really important thing here is this rent allowed us to basically charge $20 a square foot for our tenants. So if we go back to that floor plan, and this is in our full RFP response, we actually give the rents that we would charge for those tenanted spaces, and that's backed into by this lease. And so again, as we work with the city, you know, we're here to be your partner. So that can go up and down. And what we were trying to do was draw the correlation there and have you all understand what allows us to provide below market rents, prioritize different uses, and at the same time, pay the city a healthy, you know, lease rent for the next 30 years and how that would unfold. So that just describes the terms. In our actual response, we go into more details about this. So we can go to the next slide. Just kind of looked at all the things that Hudson and the development agency before us had done as far as getting grants, putting in work as far as identifying this as a historic structure. So what we tried to do was list the things we would need to execute on the plans we put forward here. One of those is to continue to use and utilize the existing grants. The next thing is like the pretty standard steps you take to get a building on a historic registry. This is a process I've personally done many times. We've now done it for a building in Hudson, and it's about writing letters and working with the two services, that's the New York State Historic Preservation Office and the National Park Services. The State Preservation Office represents the state landmarks and the NPS represents federal landmarks. And you go through about a 3-month process to get the building listed. And from then the tax credits are actually as of right. So anyone who's got a historic building that goes through this process that is making renovations, they get this tax credit. And what is pretty common in real estate, especially in the development of historic buildings, is using that tax credit as a financing mechanism. So that's what we're doing here in our projections. The other main part of this that's super important and that hopefully will become a bigger part of both the commercial development in Hudson and the Hudson Valley and residential development is a program called CPACE, Commercial PACE. New York's actually just passed the residential PACE, which will go into effect next year for this area. And basically the CPACE program is a partnership between New York State and partner banks to incentivize sustainable green improvements to commercial and residential buildings. It is a long-term loan program that is actually not, it's not papered as debt. It's not like a mortgage with a lien. Instead, it's actually becomes a part of your tax bill. So it's a way for anything, nonprofits, private individuals, companies, if you're looking to make improvements to your building or your home, this is a way for that sort of long-term financing of certain improvements. You know, it has to be stuff that is sustainable. Luckily, the Dunn Warehouse has none of that right now. So basically every improvement from windows to insulation to new efficient boilers would qualify for this program, making it really right for what we're hoping to do for the uses and the improvements. And then the last is just being honest with you all about time, right? Like we want to make sure we are aligned with the council, with the community, and we really want to do this. You all sort of supportive and want us to do that. So we left a 90-day period in there to take the time to speak with stakeholders, to refine our plan, but also to get some updates. Just to be frank with you, we were provided a structural study that was 5 years old. So we want to go to Proper and Leary, the people who did that and work locally, and have them update it. We have pool consultants to look at the feasibility of a pool being built in the ground, above ground pool, things like tracks. So there is a fair amount of diligence that still has to go on, an agreement, you know, from us all about what these uses and what's feasible. This is just kind of fleshing out a little bit more what I just said. I'm not going to go through it. These are sort of the documents we would pursue during the 90 days. We would do this at our cost and we would share this all with the city. The idea being here is like, we want to do this project. If something comes up that's news to all of us, we want to share it with you. We want to deal with you. We want to be upfront about it. So if you decide to choose us and we take this 90 days, anything report that's ordered, you know, the meeting that's attended with notes, all that will be available to the city. I think that's it. Okay, so this goes into actual numbers and sources and uses. So this lays out the different breakdown of the 4 different sources that I talked to you all about: historic tax credits, the CPACE, the existing grants that you already have at the Dunn Warehouse, and then new grants. For new grants, we basically relied on programs that we know are as of right for this building that we've achieved at other similar properties. That's like National Grid has an incentive called the Main Street Revitalization, which gives you $2 a square foot from any new commercial construction that qualifies for it. There's green infrastructure grants that are fully available and applicable to this project. And because we're on the waterfront, because we want to work with existing plans, and because there's a fair amount of green space around this, again, we're sort of right for that as well. And so we've tried to smartly select those programs and make that a part of what we're doing here to both incentivize better building, but also to utilize grants and available capital. Again, I can come back to any of this and delve into it. The historic tax credits are calculated based on what you're spending. It's something called qualified rehabilitation expenditures. I can talk more about this, but that's how we're arriving at that number. These breakdowns of the hard costs, we're taking the numbers the city gave us. So that $3.5 million of hard costs is coming from the Proper and O'Leary estimate that was provided as a part of the RFP. Obviously, times have changed, even though the work seems to be identical to what we want to get that updated, we want to share that with the city. Everything else here is basically an assumption of cost based on experience, how much legal costs, how much design and architecture costs. And again, during the 90-day period, we would get proposals for each of these and have real costs that hopefully match up or below our budgeted items. What else we got? This is just us, some more information on myself, Caitlin, and Sean, and that's probably the last slide. Oh, and this is the professionals we would like to work with. Again, if there's specific professionals the city wants to see, that's great. We try to highlight local, people that we already work with, from structural to civil, to architects who are doing local projects and have worked with cities before. That kind of informed our process here. And that's it. The picture of a wrong building.
Picture of the other building, direct experience working on it. Hudson.
And we got time for questions as
For
long
those
as.
on the council who don't know, this is basically the group that has been working on the pocketbook factory.
We're
That's what I'm
super,
gonna
we're
ask.
super lucky. We have so many other talented people who work with us who help us get it done, but we're three of the people who sit there.
I think Dewan first here.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, how many projects you guys completed like this time?
So I have done 3 historic tax credit projects that are much larger than this one.
On location?
Hudson, New York, and Upper Westchester. And CPACE is new. So currently at the pocketbook, we're using it. And I used it for a small project, again, in sort of northern Westchester, but it's just so new that kind of New York's first project. It is a program that's been around in neighboring states for about 20 years. So there's good class study on that. And then
Maybe not about MacArthur. They're
sure, yeah. I come from a family office. My grandparents moved to Hudson in 2006. I moved up here in 2018-19 with my wife to get married. But our family business is based out of the Upper West Side of Manhattan. It was started by my great grandfather. I work with my fathers, my uncles, my cousins, and we renovate buildings as our job and as our living. Generally we focus on buildings with character and communities that we're involved in, either living or have businesses in and existing property. And so for us, this is a really exciting, I'll be honest with you, small project that would be a great way for us to is productive for the community at large, for our existing businesses, and which honestly is like, maybe if I was 15 years older and smarter, I wouldn't do this, but we're excited about it. So yeah.
Brian, I'm just curious, and maybe it's a conversation for later, about how the rental model is going to work for the community space. Obviously because I believe you also just took over the Wick Hotel, correct? It went to.
No, we're in due diligence there.
Okay.
Far from.
So, but all right, so potential though for almost a monopoly situation with 2 hotels that have direct access to the only waterfront event space, which for the city's perspective would be great in terms of like permitting that would be in, but what is the sort of, process that you'll have behind making sure that not just both hotels have direct access to?
Yeah, no, I think we would want to work with the council to develop the terms by which we can, set like a certain number of community focused events that could either be hosted for free or very low cost, so that they
or limiting the amount of time that the waterfront could be shut down for private events.
Yeah, so I think as we progress with you guys, we could develop a whole schedule of of expectations so that we can plan on the business side and the city can plan and the community can feel involved and like, no, there really is a play, they can feel like it's recorded that this is a place where they will be welcome to host events, to use regularly. So yeah, we didn't really flush out or we weren't prescriptive about it, but we want to work with you to determine that.
Yeah, and I would add to that, like, We'd love for you to be prescriptive. Like the more prescriptive you can be about what you want, the number of times you want it and what price you or what, whether it's free, whether it's at a reduced price, who gets to use it, the better for us. Constraints for us here about what you want is helpful. I'll speak to the other point, which is, again, we are so far from being the purchasers of the WIC. That is a hotel that is existing, has an operator. That would be a real estate transaction, not in any sense tied to this. And in fact, the partners in this and the partners in the pocketbook and the partners in WIC are all three different groups. We are at the core of that because we're sitting here very engaged. But it isn't about a master plan or anything like that. And if it's a concern, you should not ask us to do this. Like, again, we want to do this, but this is not vital to our business. This is because we want to spend the next 3 years bringing the water online.
Let me say that of the 6 proposals we received, they were most responsive to what we actually wanted. And that's why the committee, which included Margaret, we were on 20 minutes,
Yeah.
Michael,
Yeah.
and a number of others, myself, did a great job selecting this group. Yeah, so I want to congratulate the committee on coming with.
You know, I think like we're still very open to continuing to change this plan, to ground it in the things that the community needs and to adjust the business plan accordingly. So that we can still develop it with the city. And we like this sort of critical feedback. It's good for us. Thank you.
Margaret, and I'll get to you, Bill, after the council. Yeah.
I just want to comment on, when I was on the committee, as Tom said, we looked at a number of different proposals, and what was striking to me about this particular one was that there really did seem to be an understanding of the interconnectivity of the building with the waterfront and the river. And it wasn't just, oh, here's a building with a great view. It was, let's integrate this building and make it part of what's already there on the waterfront and have it kind of be this seamless thing. And that to me was really what appealed here. And also the concept that by leasing it and by having a partnership, that it continues to be a city property for the people of Hudson. So that to me was really what I like. I'm skeptical about your swimming pool, but.
No, actually, you talked to them. I'm skeptical about the cost of it. I know you can do it.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm skeptical, yeah, the cost is huge. Yeah. And the size, I'm a swimmer, I think I mentioned this at the meeting, I asked you dimensions. I don't think it's, you know, to put something in that could actually be a lap pool, you know, but I thought it was a great proposal, even without swimming.
I wake up thinking about insurance, so you're
Yeah, oh,
preaching
yeah.
the choir.
Oh, yeah, insurance, lifeguards, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Malachi?
Yeah, my question is also about the pool. Would it be a community pool for everybody?
Yeah. So this was coming out of the feedback from the city that this was a want and a desire. This is not a for purchase like product. This is a community pool that we as a community would have to dictate what are the rules. Is it open to the public? You get a pass when you live here, that's free. And if you're coming from the outside, you have to pay. Like, we're open to all that. And what we tried to do was respond and say, if the city wants a pool, we will spend the next 90 days diligencing this, coming up with the cost. Luckily at Pocketbook, we are building wet facilities. So we have these consultants and we had at least done a gut check on like, is this feasible? Can we do it? And what is the general high level cost? And it was not discouraging enough for us to not put it in here. But this is what we'll need to balance with you all as we go through the process if you select us, for sure. And I think the pool part is the most challenging of the fiscal improvements.
Yeah, I just want to echo with Margaret, like, I actually like the program, like, if you guys gonna lease this, you know, so it's a benefit for city plus you guys, and usually they come for buy the property and test their own, but I like that idea. Thank you. And also need a sign.
Heather, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just
Heather,
also,
Also
I
on the
just-
committee?
yeah, I was also on the committee and I just wanted to echo basically what Margaret said. When we first got the proposals, this was not my first choice, I will freely admit. But after we went through the due diligence, I became convinced that this is the best option. I believe that this organization really understands the balance of the city. And I think they are trying to make it truly accessible to everyone that lives in Hudson, as well as the people that come and visit. And I just wanted to say that because that's how I felt.
Thank you, Heather. Did somebody have their hand up over here? Dominic?
Thank you. Yeah, as Tom can attest to, you know, the lease thing is gonna be very interesting, because we're in a long-term lease now, and it's not doing well for the city, down at Front Street, so.
Yeah.
In terms of, you said you reached out to the youth center, and things like that, is that something that you're willing to do, to have the youth center at that location?
Yeah, I mean, I'm big, just me personally, I'm a big fan of the center. I'm a big fan of the family and amazing people who put time and energy into making it possible. So I think for us, it's about working with you all. And if that's something that's sustainable for one of the spaces, then we should explore that. Like we put on this, I think it was like for one of the two non-food and beverage spaces at $20 a square foot, it was $700 a month in rent. That's something the youth center can accomplish, great. If not, we can sit with you all, figure out what that number is, and figure out how to adjust the schedule to accommodate it. Yeah, so I would totally be inclined to do that. And I think as a group, we've spoken about being very open to that and have reached out when we heard the news of what was happening with the existing structure.
When you talk about liability in terms of the pool, the lifeguards, would that be something you guys are on? Liability, is that the waiver? of the city?
Yeah, so we'll both, you know, I think this is something that's a big part of the 90 days, which is fleshing this out with the city. Typically, we both have policies. The city will have a policy and we'll have a policy. We as the operators, if we're running the pool, will have to carry the risk of that. You'll have to still have some sort of property insurance as the owner of the property. And so I think we need to look at that, you know, it's not, if we run it as a public pool with restrictions and with rules and with life safety, it's not gonna be a crazy insurance bill. If it's not well organized, it will be a problem. So it's more about organization, communication, and getting a couple quotes beforehand, because these facilities are pretty common in municipalities and you've got insurers who do this pretty regularly.
And I think this, you know, with not purchasing it, it being not on the tax roll now, then that's where the city's gotta try to balance the lease with taxes, right? And also the sidewalk, with the new sidewalk law, with you not owning the building, the city's gonna be on the hook to repair the sidewalk.
You mean the flags, yeah. So I would say that, like, again, it's probably poor business on my part. You should negotiate those things with us. So when we sit with you and we talk about a lease, you should say, Gabriel, Sean, and Caitlin, we want you to be responsible for the sidewalk, and we're gonna say, okay, but you have to stay on the taxes, and we can have a give and take there. If there's things you want us to do, because we're about to spend a couple $1 million renovating this space, it would make sense for us to do new sidewalks. And at the same time, we're gonna tell you up front that if this has a huge tax bill that you try to push on us, we can't make this work, or we can't make it work at the rents that are affordable and accessible. So there would have to be some give and take, and if we're expected to take on more costs, we're gonna try to balance that with the different things we have available. But we'll be upfront.
Keep in mind that an ice skate rink, something we don't have. And
Right. And it's way easier to build than a pool, and it can become a roller rink or an ice rink. But as Caitlin pointed out, and which is pretty common now, is you have facilities that can do both, that have a pool, that have a hard top, that allow people to skate. So all that has a cost, and we need to talk as a community about which of those things are valuable and which of those things will get used, frankly.
Now, you said historic grants, so who, since you guys have been running, would you guys be eligible for historic because we own the building?
Yeah, so that's a big part of this, is the historic tax credits, and we're gonna use that to do the construction. So basically what happens is, the easiest way to think about it is when you do a historic renovation, after you do the improvements, you file with the National Park Services and State Historic Preservation, and then they give you a tax credit. That tax credit can be used over 5 years after the building is put into service, once you've done the renovations. When you want to use it as a financing mechanism in order to do construction, you essentially pre-sell those credits. So there's insurance companies, individuals, there's a whole business of people who will give you money upfront for the future tax credits that you create, because they buy them at a discount and then they get a discounted tax bill. In our application, or in our proposal, we have said we are going to go out, because this is what we've done on 4 or 5 other projects quite successfully, and we are going to pre-sell those credits and use that money to improve the building as our major source of the construction. If you go back and look, of the $3.5 million in improvement, $1.8 million is coming from the sale of those tax credits.
Is there any restriction because of historic, is there any restriction that what can be done?
There are so many restrictions.
That's what I'm saying, that isn't that gonna go and add to what can be put in there?
So, yes and no. There are rules of thumb with dealing with SHPO and National Park Services about what they care about, and there are things that they don't care about. So this building is an exterior landmark. Right. But for the most part, they don't care what you do in the building, as long as you're not doing some things in front of windows. Right. So it's about sightline and it's about seeing the historic structure. They care about windows and doors and roofs and historic elements. If it's not attached to the building, it's not subject. So a pool is not subject to anything, you know. I don't have a rendering here. Caitlin is way more talented than me. Everything that she's showing on the renderings are as if we were doing this historically. So when she is showing the outline of a doorway, she's iterating that out as if we had to historically renovate it using the historic material and get the approval process. If you look at our 30-month timeline, we have about 6 to 8 months to get those approvals from the State Historic Preservation and the National Park Services. And you need those before you do work.
And would you also use our Restore New York money?
Yeah, I'm using all the money that you can give us.
Okay.
Yeah.
You done?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Is Malachi?
Well, the pool isn't, you know, utilized because of the, you gotta talk about the liability.
Yeah.
I think something family oriented definitely should be put down there in place, but that's really what's needed in Hudson.
For sure.
We have nothing really family oriented. So I like the roller skating idea. I think it's something else too.
Yeah, I think we think of 3 or 4, we come up with pricing. Like, for example, I have built a bowling alley. I know the cost of bowling. We can look at that.
Yeah.
We can look at these different things. How much space does it take up? And then we can make a decision about where do we want to invest our dollars as far as the public amenity.
I have some hands up there, Michael. Oh, okay.
Bill,
Oh, sorry, Bill. I don't know about you. You're easy to forget.
Great project, I love it. Just one question, and I know some of my aldermen would know. It's really hard to find, retail space for minority owned businesses just because of the cost. And I see that you're gonna incorporate, commercial and retail space. Would you have some sort of programming where you would try to?
For dispensary?
Yeah.
Very good. Well, I can think of maybe some people who are cooking food in our community right now, and doing hair and so forth. But it's gonna be a paper project, and we know it will do well down there to have a good retail establishment that was possibly a smaller restaurant, doing, you know, food or something of that nature, well, a minority owned business.
Yes, so once again, put that restriction on us, tell us to do that, and we'll do it, you know? Either way, we're gonna be talking, the focus is local existing businesses that have either been pushed off Warren Street or have not been able to take their own storefront. So yes to everything you're saying, and even better if you all tell us that.
Heather, are you done already, or is your hand still up? I guess so.
Sorry,
Shayna,
nope.
Wait, what did that mean?
Your hands not up.
It meant my hand was no longer up. I apologize.
Okay.
I'm a Luddite.
Okay. Shayna,
Hi, this sounds amazing. I came in a skeptic and I'm leaving a hopeful Hudson resident. I have 2 quick points. One, I'm assuming was just maybe, I'm hoping, a slip of mouth. As one of the board members of the Sloop Club, I heard mentioned minimal closure of the waterfront, which is, I want to clarify, it's not possible to close the waterfront. And I think that it was just
there's no possibility. I don't know who.
We didn't, not in our presentation, not in our plans, you're good.
Okay, amazing. That was my assumption. I don't even know logistically how you would do it, but wanted to make sure. And 2 was my proposition to the board, more so than the presenters, of does sound like an amazing opportunity. I would hate as a resident to see it go to a lot of private events. And I think it has the opportunity to really serve the community in an important and desperately needed way. And I think capping the amount of private events allowed per year is necessary to keep it being vital to the community. And that's all.
Thank you. And Ron Kopnicki.
Yes, hi. Since in response to a post recently on Gossips of Rivertown, Mr. Hoffman had referred to activity by the DRI committee, which I assume is the committee you've been referring to in talking about this proposal.
It's not.
Yes.
Okay.
I would like to know going forward, since the DRI committee now seems to be active, what information the public can expect to receive on the committee's activities.
Yeah, I guess you'd have to ask, who's the mayor, I guess, is technically the chair of the DRI.
Does the DRI committee still maintain that it's not subject to the open meetings law?
I believe that is what council has advised.
Council being Ms. Peck?
Legal counsel.
Legal counsel.
Being Mr. Howard?
No.
I guess.
Now, is it still on the grounds that the committee does not define a quorum?
You're asking the wrong person, Ron. I'm not in charge of the committee.
Well, you are on it, though.
Yeah, but I don't make the decisions like that.
Okay, well, who do I ask about this then?
I already said the mayor would be the chair of that committee.
Okay, another question that I have is there is a page on the city website about DRI. It's listed, it's listed under About Hudson. Will information be posted about the activities of the committee on that page? For example, minutes. Are there any minutes of meetings of the committee since the year 2020, which was the last meeting of record?
I don't have any insight into this.
So the DRI committee met as effectively a selection committee for this RFP. And as the selection committee, we had to make decisions and review information on a confidential basis. So those were not public meetings as far as the DRI committee is concerned, and therefore they were not advertised as such, not subject to public meetings law, and there were no minutes of those meetings. I am not aware of any plans by the mayor to reconvene the DRI committee publicly, but that can certainly be posted to him.
Will the current composition of the committee be posted on the city website?
Sure, we can update the names of the people who are on the committee.
Do you have a question for the presentation, or can we finish our presentation?
I'd just like to ask one more question, because this is my first opportunity to ask any questions about this. In other words, I understand you to say that the DRI committee, this is the first meeting that the DRI committee has had since December of 2020.
Possibly. I have not been in this current position since June 21, so I don't know if there were meetings before then, but not since I have been in this position.
Okay.
I just want to make a comment. I was invited to join a selection committee for very specific projects. To be honest with you, I wasn't told, can you join the DRI committee? There's just, here's a committee of people who are reviewing some RFPs. We would like you to participate from the council. And so when I saw the gossips thing about DRI, I'm like, I didn't know I was on the DRI committee. As far as I knew,
just let me say that.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I knew, Ron, I was on a committee that was made up of various people from different parts of city government, and I assumed I had been asked to participate as a member of the council. And we were focused on this project.
You can look, a lot of this is referred to on Gossips of Rivertown.
Oh,
if you search, there was a DRI committee which was begun in 2018 under Mayor Rector. It had meetings in 2019 and 2020. Before March of 2020, it never claimed to be exempt from the open meetings law, and meetings were open to the public, and I attended some of them. From March 2020 to December 2020.
Ron, can we cut this history lesson short, please?
Well, I'm trying to put this in context because.
Yeah, no, I understand the context. We all do.
But
Yeah, sure. Go ahead,
So
Margaret.
Ron,
the rest of 2020.
Ron, please. Go ahead, Margaret.
sorry, Ron, let me just respond. The only point I was trying to make was, I am aware of the DRI committee. I was surprised when I read that thing in Gossips about the DRI committee now includes Margaret Morris, because quite frankly, I was simply asked to participate in the selection committee that was looking at responses to an RFP for a specific project. There was no reference to anything DRI in this
Okay, well,
committee.
I'll just finish briefly. The only point I'm making is that perhaps then this committee should not have been called DRI committee, because the DRI committee does have a history.
What you read, Gossips is not the record.
Well, I understand that. I'm not saying it is the record, but I'm saying that the DRI committee has a history, and I wanted to discuss it to some extent, and I'm done now.
Okay, thank you.
Moving right along. Presentation. Sorry, is there any more questions about our presentation?
I have one last question. Yeah. First of all, you've done a wonderful job. I think it's going to be spectacular. From a financial point of view, how will your business sustain so it doesn't go under? Like you will have rents from the restaurant, the space, and the three retail stores.
Yes, so that is the core of the business.
Okay.
We did, I believe in our model, include 10 to 12 private events a year where we'll charge a premium for. That's what I'm saying. I think you guys should think about what the appropriate number is. We can look at what that costs. We can look at how much that makes. And if that leaves a hole, we'll either need to raise rents a little bit, lower our rent to the city and adjust that. This is not a moneymaker, you know.
Or find the delta where both parties profit.
Correct, or spend less on construction, you know, there's different ways to cut the apple. I would say that we just need to be communicative and understand how those things are toggled within themselves, yeah.
I think the important thing to think about is, you know, like a healthy waterfront is an active waterfront, so like what we don't want to do is restrict things on either side to the point where not much is happening, like I imagine that everyone has the same shared goal of wanting it to be like a vibrant, active place that people use all the time. And the more, you know, that we're able to like work towards that common goal, which will include some private events and lots of public events, I think the more successful all of it.
I guess the last thing to note as you think about our presentation as well and about the parcel itself is it has a fair amount of surrounding property, right? Where we've got, I think, some parking required. I think we're showing some outdoor seating. That could be further maximized. So while we are limited in the square footage in the space, you can see how Caitlin is trying to pull the space outside and make the outdoor space also usable. So again, as you talk about how do we fill that delta, the more we can use the site for different productive means, not just for parking, which I know is needed and will be required, but for recreational use, for places to eat, that allows those businesses to be larger than the footprint of just the retail and commercial. So that'll be another thing for us to talk about. How much do you all and does the community want those uses to expand outside of the footprint of the structure?
And not compete with what's going around in your neighborhood.
Correct. You know, obviously in that neighborhood, we're not a furniture warehouse and we're not Ben Fiend's beautiful red barn. So we're already different. And I think the size of the spaces we're creating are, you know, you're talking about under that, you know, around 1,000 square feet. Like that is a box that is way different than the comparative spaces around us. So hopefully it just offers more diversity rather than competition. And generally it feels like at least that part of Hudson is calling, you know, you see a tremendous amount of people who are walking and are moving through that space, even with all the construction and the rail stuff going on. And so ideally, it'll just expand that as a walkable, livable, and an experience-based part of the town.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a little bit of business left here. We have 3 communications. The one I direct your attention to is an invitation to participate in Veterans Day. They're all worth reading, but that one is more requires a response. So we have 4 resolutions and I'll need introductions and seconds. The first resolution is Commissioner Deeds. Dewan?
Sure.
Oh, no, Vicky Beecham. Oops. Dewan and Vicky. The next resolution is the youth center receiving $1,402.
The senior center use.
I'm sorry, thank you, it's a senior center. Doesn't say who from, I assume it's what they collect at their various,
It just said donation, and it's.
yeah, no, I know. Can I have an introduction, a second, please? One, and, what was that?
No.
So who's it gonna be?
It's gonna be me.
Okay. The third resolution, the third resolution authorizes the sale of 14. You know, we went through this whole business and we'll resolve. You'll introduce?
Second.
All right.
That's what him transfer is good.
And what, you're second. And the last resolution has to do with authorizing the mayor to execute a certificate of debt obligation relative to the development of Providence Hall and Schuyler Apartments. Introductions. What, okay, Ryan and Dewan. Sorry now.
That's okay. Too late.
Too
My
late.
idea.
It's obsession.
On that. Okay, and then we have some laws still percolating, ripening on our desk. Brewing, right? Yeah. I don't know about Oktoberfest. Fermenting, that's a good one. Okay, let's see what we got here. Oh, Dewan, you're on all of them, so please.
Is there any, gonna be any discussion on some of those?
Before we, before we vote on them, there, but yeah.
Is there any time this evening or people?
Yeah, if you want, I mean, I don't know.
I just have one observation on the alcohol.
Sure.
There's nothing in there about glass or garbage. And if you're going to have something in glass, like
Isn't that already in?
It's not.
It
can be glass.
There's not.
The only thing in code refers to our, like, New York State open container, which does not define the
Right.
receptacle.
Yeah, there's not, and I think, like, read it all over carefully, but we need to think about garbage, we need to think about security. And we definitely need to think.
Would that be part of the permit though?
It's not in the, it's not.
Yeah, no, we should check on that before we.
Right.
Paper cups only.
Sorry.
Right, so look up.
Paper or?
No solo cups, no plastic. Think about it, you're fighting straw, it's like
City of Hudson branded.
paper straw and a plastic stuff. I agree with you.
Okay, that's all the business we have.
Can I make a motion?
No, we can't yet.
I think you can.
What,
Oh,
did you want to talk about
oh,
CPA though?
why?
Weren't you going to discuss the items that need? to be
Oh,
addressed in
I
this?
thought we'd do that next week when we.
I mean, you put it next week.
Yeah.
Okay.
There were just a couple correction, things we had to fill in. That we didn't have last time when we introduced it. So we'll do that, at the phone. Which one is this?
The community choice aggregation for, power utility.
Oh, yes, yes. Public comment.
We're not taking any comment.
I'll make a motion to.
I hate to be the party pooper of alcohol law again.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of, did you get a first?
So we get a second.
So.
Yeah.
Motion.
Oh, Ryan, second? Go on, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Thank you.
Well, I think it's kind of irresponsible.